It was the early 1900s in the rugged Badlands of Alberta, Canada. A team of fossil hunters, led by Barnum Brown, stumbled upon something extraordinary: fossilized bones embedded deep within the earth. But these weren't just any bones. They belonged to a creature unlike anything scientists had seen before. It was low to the ground, wide-bodied, and encased in bony armor. Even more astonishing, it had a massive club at the end of its tail. This was the first known ankylosaur, and it sparked immediate fascination. The discovery raised countless questions. Why would evolution create such a heavily armored herbivore? What kind of predators could it have faced as more fossils were uncovered over the next few decades? Paleontologists realized this wasn't a one-time oddity. Ankylosaurs were a widespread, successful group that had thrived for tens of millions of years. Newspapers called them living tanks, and museums competed to display their armored bones. These strange dinosaurs challenged everything people thought they knew about survival. While predators evolved sharper teeth, ankylosaurs doubled down on defense. They didn't chase, bite, or roar, they endured. And that endurance, not aggression, made them one of the most successful dinosaurs in Earth's history. The roots of ankylosaurs go back over 150 million years to the late Jurassic. Their earliest relatives were small, lightly armored dinosaurs that likely lived in forested environments. Over time, natural selection favored those with thicker skin, heavier osteoderms, and a more defensive posture. By the mid-Cretaceous, ankylosaurs had evolved into walking fortresses. Their armor included fused bone plates along their backs, necks, and even eyelids. These adaptations weren't random. They were responses to increasing predation from evolving theropods. Ankylosaurs split into two major groups: nodosaurids, with elaborate shoulder spikes and no tail club, and ankylosaurids, known for their iconic bony tail clubs. These clubs weren't just for show. They could crush bones and were likely used in both defense and possibly combat with rivals. Some, like Ankylosaurus magnaventris, could weigh over 8 tons and stretch 20 feet long. Their wide, low bodies made them difficult to flip over, a critical advantage against attackers. Their legs were short but strong, supporting their massive weight. Every inch of their anatomy seemed tailored for survival. And despite being slow-moving herbivores, their evolutionary design was so effective that it remained largely unchanged for tens of millions of years across multiple continents. Ankylosaurs weren't just armored, they were masterclasses in evolutionary defense. Their backs were lined with osteoderms, bone plates embedded in the skin that varied in shape and size. These weren't randomly placed. CT scans have shown precise arrangements for maximum protection and flexibility. Beneath the armor was a muscular frame capable of absorbing shocks. The skulls were reinforced, allowing them to withstand blunt force. But their tail club was their ultimate weapon, made of fused vertebrae and wrapped in hardened bone. It could deliver devastating blows. Studies suggest some tail clubs could generate force strong enough to shatter a T-Rex's leg bone. And yet, they rarely needed to use it. Their appearance alone, spiked, squat, and solid, was often enough to deter predators. Even their underbellies, usually a weak spot, were difficult to access due to their low profile. Ankylosaurs didn't need speed. They needed patience, precision, and armor. In fact, many modern armored vehicles borrow design concepts unintentionally mirrored in these ancient creatures: low centers of gravity, reinforced hulls, and rear-based weapons. They were slow-moving, yes, but every part of their body said one thing to would-be predators: think twice. Unlike the dramatic predators of the Cretaceous, ankylosaurs led quieter lives. Fossil evidence suggests they preferred lowland floodplains, where vegetation was dense and predators fewer. They were ground-level browsers, feeding on ferns, cycads, and low shrubs. Their teeth were small and leaf-shaped, adapted for slicing plants rather than grinding them. They likely used their strong beaks and jaws to clip vegetation efficiently. Trace fossils, including trackways, suggest they moved slowly with deliberate steps and often traveled alone or in small groups. Some fossilized nests and trackways even hint that young ankylosaurs might have stayed close to parents, suggesting minimal but present parental behavior. Their eyesight and sense of smell were well developed, helping them detect danger early. They didn't fight for dominance like ceratopsians or chase prey like dromaeosaurs. Instead, they moved steadily, browsed consistently, and avoided unnecessary risks. In many ways, they resemble modern herbivores like armadillos or porcupines, animals that rely on passive defense and cautious movement. While other dinosaurs roared and ran, ankylosaurs simply endured, surviving on routine, caution, and the protection of their natural armor. For decades, ankylosaurs were dismissed as dumb tanks, giant reptiles with tiny brains. But modern science is painting a more nuanced picture. While their brains were indeed small relative to body size, they were not without sophistication. Recent 3D scans of fossilized skulls show that ankylosaurs had relatively large olfactory bulbs, indicating a keen sense of smell. This would have been essential for identifying plants, sensing predators, or locating mates. Their inner ears also suggest they had excellent balance, critical for swinging their heavy tail clubs accurately. Some studies have proposed that ankylosaurs used low-frequency sounds to communicate, like elephants or crocodilians. While they may not have been problem solvers like birds or mammals, they were perfectly adapted to their niche. Intelligence isn't always about puzzles. It's about fitting into the world effectively. And ankylosaurs were masters at that. Their sensory systems were tuned for survival, and their behavior simple, predictable, cautious, helped them thrive. Evolution doesn't reward cleverness for its own sake. It rewards efficiency. And in that regard, ankylosaurs may have been far smarter than we ever gave them credit for. Once ankylosaurs hit their evolutionary stride, they barely changed. From roughly 100 to 66 million years ago, their anatomy remained remarkably consistent. This period, spanning more than 30 million years, represents one of the longest durations of anatomical stability among large dinosaurs. Why? Because it worked. Ankylosaurs had optimized survival. Their armor, tail club, low profile, and steady diet provided them with all the tools they needed. Fossils of ankylosaurs have been found from North America to Asia, revealing global success. In Mongolia, species like Tarchia adapted to arid deserts, while Sichania developed broader nasal passages to cool air in the heat. In Alberta, massive specimens like Euoplocephalus roamed alongside ceratopsians and tyrannosaurs. Despite the geographic differences, their core design remained constant. They were nature's if it ain't broke, don't fix it story. Even in times of shifting climates and rising predator threats, ankylosaurs remained steady. This evolutionary stasis is rare and speaks volumes about how well adapted they were. Few creatures in history have enjoyed such long-term dominance without significant change. That is the true legacy of the ankylosaurs' golden age. While ankylosaurs stayed the same, their enemies evolved. By the late Cretaceous, new predators were emerging faster, larger, and smarter. Dromaeosaurs, like Velociraptor and Deinonychus, hunted in coordinated groups, testing the boundaries of ankylosaur defenses. But the real challenge came from tyrannosaurids. Species like Albertosaurus and eventually Tyrannosaurus rex developed bone-crushing jaws, acute eyesight, and complex hunting strategies. Fossil evidence shows healed bite wounds on ankylosaur armor proof that attacks happened. And sometimes the ankylosaur survived, but the arms race was escalating. Predators began targeting the underbelly, limbs, or waiting for isolated individuals. The Ankylosaur's tail club, once unmatched, now met jaws that could absorb the blow. These changing dynamics didn't wipe out ankylosaurs immediately, but they narrowed the margins. Fewer safe zones, more aggressive threats. The balance was shifting, and for the first time in millions of years, the ankylosaur's survival strategy was being tested at its limits. When the asteroid struck 66 million years ago, it was the final blow, but not the only one. The world was already changing. Sea levels had dropped. Temperatures were fluctuating. Ferns and cycads, the ankylosaur's main diet, were being replaced by flowering plants that grew taller and required different feeding strategies. Their specialized bodies, so perfect for stability, became liabilities in a world requiring adaptability. The asteroid impact triggered fires, darkness, and a collapse in the food chain. Without sun, plants died. Without plants, herbivores starved. Without herbivores, predators followed. Ankylosaurs were among the first to vanish, not because they weren't armored, but because they were over-specialized. They couldn't climb, swim, or adapt their diet quickly. They couldn't outrun the darkness. Fossil records show a sharp decline in ankylosaur diversity right before the extinction event. They had weathered predators and climate shifts, but not the global collapse that followed the impact. After 50 million years of success, their reign ended not with a dramatic battle, but with a slow, silent disappearance into history. Modern paleontology has revolutionized what we know about ankylosaurs. One of the most spectacular discoveries was Borealopelta markmicheli, found in 2011 in Canada. This fossil preserved not just bones, but skin, armor placement, and even pigment patterns. Scientists discovered reddish-brown coloring, likely used for camouflage. Advanced CT scans revealed tail musculature, brain size, and inner ear structure. These tools showed that ankylosaurs had better mobility and balance than previously thought. Some fossils include gut contents, offering direct evidence of their diet. We've even identified different armor textures across species, suggesting visual signaling or sexual display. Public fascination has grown as well. Ankylosaurs appear in museums, documentaries, and even movies like Jurassic World, where their uniqueness captivates viewers. Far from being forgotten, ankylosaurs have become icons of passive strength creatures that didn't fight to rule, but endured. Each fossil tells part of that story, and as technology improves, more secrets will come to light. Fossils are not just relics, they're time machines, and the ankylosaurs still have stories left to tell. In today's fast-paced world, we often celebrate the loudest, fastest, and most aggressive. But ankylosaurs remind us of a different kind of success. They didn't dominate by hunting. They didn't race for territory. They simply survived steadily, silently, and successfully for 50 million years. Their legacy isn't just about bones or museums. It's about what it means to endure. Children marvel at their spiky backs. Adults admire their evolutionary elegance. Scientists respect their resilience. They show up in books, toys, and classrooms, igniting curiosity across generations. In a sense, they represent the underdog story of the dinosaur world, a creature that relied on caution, not combat. Today, their fossils sit in glass cases, but their message is alive. Success doesn't always roar. Sometimes it rumbles softly beneath the earth, waiting to be unearthed. The ankylosaurs may be gone, but their story lives on in stone, in science, and in us.